Good morning, Lubbock and West Texas. Welcome to the program this morning. 8:06 a.m. This is the wake-up call. Benji Snead here along with producer Brennan Riker. 75 degrees outside right now, looking for a high today. Another scorcher, 101 degrees. It's going to be another hot one. Don't see that changing in the foreseeable future. Phone and text lines are open this morning. Appreciate listeners engaging in the last hour with our guest, Councilman Tim Green, newly elected Councilman Tim Green. The number there, 806-771-0923, 806-771-0923. Real quick, I want to pause for a second, remind folks out there about our friends over at Two Buds Water Well Service and Drilling. Two Buds Water Well Service and Drilling. They handle new residential, commercial, and ag well drilling. They do new pump installations. I mean, there's not a bigger issue out there than water, right? So these guys are busy, but they do free estimates if you need a new well, if you need an existing well, if you just want to test the quality of the water in your existing well, if there are questions there. They'll drill you a well right here in the city. You can do that to supplement your landscaping. They'll handle that entire process for you in terms of the required permits, paperwork, taking the hassle completely off your shoulders. But these guys really are the experts. You don't have to look any further if you're in the market for a new well or just need to check up on your existing well. It's Two Buds Water Well Service. I'm going to give you their number, 806-401-5111. And we certainly appreciate their support of the program. Moving right along this morning, joining us in the studio right now is Lubbock Lights editor and former editor of Lubbock Avalanche Journal, now editor of LubbockLights.com, Terry Greenberg. Good morning.
Morning.
I'm glad you're here. You've been busy.
That's
understatement.
That's true. It's true. Yeah. It's true.
So a lot of folks don't know Lubbock Lights isn't a terribly large operation. You yourself actually went to San Antonio and covered this Ferrum Capital trial with the recent guilty verdicts, yes?
Yes, sir.
How many days were you there?
Got down there, let's see, I was 13 days total with travel, but we got down there on August 6th for the pretrial hearing on the 7th, which was interesting.
Yeah.
Then the trial started Monday the 10th, and it ended Tuesday of this week. It was supposed to originally be a 3-week trial. In the back of my head, I kept hearing the Gilligan's Island theme song, a 3-hour cruise. It didn't turn out to be a 3-week trial. But I was ready to leave San Antonio Tuesday, and then Tuesday night I got an invitation to a press conference by the feds. And covered that, and then started to come home. But
and we'll talk a little bit about the process you have in place and kind of the philosophy in terms of covering news that that is unique to Lubbock Lights. But this trial, I mean, we could spend a couple hours talking about this. Fascinating. But for those that aren't familiar, the latest is, I'll just unpack this real quick. Federal jury in San Antonio found 2 of the men involved in this, what they're describing as a Ponzi scheme, were found guilty on all counts. This was 2 days ago. The specific charges were conspiracy to commit wire fraud, conspiracy to commit money laundering, conspiracy to launder monetary instruments, and securities fraud. The 2 men that were convicted, Joshua Allen of Lubbock, Mike Cox of Lubbock, now face up to 70 years in prison. So that's the background from this week. Now let's back up out of this. Lubbock Lights broke this story, if I'm not mistaken.
locally.
Locally.
It had been reported in San Antonio because of Josh and Mike's San Antonio affiliate, Brooklyn Chandler Willie. And the story started there and then came over to here, and we broke it December of 24. And I think with the story yesterday about the federal press conference, we've now done 54 stories about this in a little over a year and a half.
A year and a half. What was your immediate reaction when the jury found Joshua Allen and Michael Cox guilty on all 4 counts?
I really didn't react because I'm texting James Clark back here in Lubbock.
One of your reporters.
Well, basically, you talked about we're not big. I'm the editor. James is the associate editor. There's the entire newsroom.
Right.
James is back here. We have a story on the website ready to go, and I'm texting him, count 1, both guilty, count 2, both guilty. So I really wasn't reacting to what was going on in the courtroom as much as reporting, and we got that story up. And then, from there, I would have liked to have talked to the jury foreman. They were gone. Would have liked to have talked to the defense attorneys. They were gone. Talked to a few of the victims, and the families of the defendants now convicted did not want to talk. So it was. I really didn't have much of a reaction at all until I think I got back to my hotel and was writing the story, and it was starting to seep in.
Right.
It was like. Because people have been asking, I'm getting calls from people,
right?
A friend of Mike Cox's, my wife asking me, what do you think is going to happen? And I said, I don't know. We'll find out. But the evidence was pretty over as, excuse my cough, to quote Joseph Blackwell, the lead prosecutor, the evidence was overwhelming.
Right.
He said, and you sat there for 5 days watching him present his case. I said, this is
not looking good.
Not looking good.
For them, at least.
And that was why, over the weekend, let's see what the defense comes up with.
How long did the jury deliberate?
Less than 3 hours.
Is that, give us some perspective?
It's pretty quick.
Yeah.
So, the closing arguments were Tuesday morning. I went back to the hotel. The hotel was like right down the street. And I'm writing the story on the closing arguments. I decide to go back to the courtroom, and I'm sitting in a conference room outside the courtroom. And I'm going to plug my computer back in. I'm going to write the story. And all of a sudden, one of the court officials sees me, and he points to me. And right before that, Josh and his attorneys walked in. And he points to me, and he goes, verdict. I grab everything. I run into the courtroom. I was sitting in the front, the front row all the way to the left, kind of out of the way of other people. And it took a little while for people to stream in because they were all texted or called. And then in comes the jury and in comes the judge, and it hit the fan. So
the charges that now guilty, wire fraud conspiracy, money laundering conspiracy, conspiracy to launder monetary instruments. You sat in the courtroom. In practical terms, under those charges, what were these guys doing?
They took money from investors, and at some point they needed to pay previous investors. And this was made extremely, it was like black and white on charts that the prosecution put up, that you'd see here's the best way to explain it. You'd see a $5,000 balance in their checking account. In comes a $200,000 investment. Out goes, this isn't exact, but as an example, $100,000 to one person, $50,000 to another person, and $25,000 to 2 other people. And then the checking account is back toward that number. And they showed this again and again and again. And how do you refute that?
Well, and those types of transactions, was that the $9 million that they were talking about?
No.
Okay.
That's the money that went. That's really what they based the Ponzi scheme on. The money comes in, you use it to pay a previous investor. So,
by definition, yeah.
Yeah. Now, they also showed transactions. Money would come in, and they'd show transactions to Allen and Cox and Willie. That's different. So they were taking. There's a whole lot of detail you can get into about commissions and all sorts of things, but basically the Fed said conservatively the 3 defendants made $9.2 million on this.
Wow. We'll talk more about it. Visiting with Terry Greenberg this morning, editor of LubbockLights.com, in their comprehensive coverage of this Ferrum Capital trial that just took place down in San Antonio. We'll talk about what happens next in the case and a little bit more background with Terry right after this. Stay with us. You're listening to the Wake Up Call.
Wake Up Call with Benji Snead continues on 92.3 The Hub, the voice for freedom.
Welcome back to the program. You're listening to the Wake Up Call this morning. It's Thursday, August the 20th, 2026. It's going to be a hot day today, 101 degrees. Thanks for joining us. Phone and text lines are open. If you have a specific question or comment regarding the recent developments in the Ferrum Capital Ponzi scheme, guilty verdicts this week, text or call 806-771-0923. We're visiting with the man behind the coverage himself, editor of Lubbock Lights.com. Terry Greenberg. Thanks for being here. Good morning again.
Good morning.
Want to get into this right away. Before the break, you were talking about specifics about evidence that they were showing. Basically, somebody would make an investment of, say, I think you used $200,000, and then that money just immediately gets flipped, if you will.
Like a day or two later,
yeah.
You can see this money came in.
Right.
This money went out, and they showed example after example after example about that.
Right. What evidence, in your opinion, having sat there for 13 days, mattered the most?
Well, Joseph Blackwell put up around 30 witnesses, victims.
Prosecutor,
and thank you. One of the things I was careful about in the story is because they had not been convicted yet, is saying people who lost money, not victims. I'm being careful, being fair. Now, you can call them victims because they've been convicted. But he'd show these people and how they lost money. I think one of the most devastating one was a man who gave $500,000 to Brooklyn Chandler Willie. He wanted his money safe to grow a little bit because he needed a kidney transplant. I asked Joseph Blackwell at a press conference in San Antonio yesterday, do you know what happened to him? And he goes, he still hasn't gotten his kidney. That I think was the stories from the witnesses were devastating. That coupled with a very detailed financial
accounting,
all of that was which was put together by an IRS special agent named Rebecca Jones, who was put on the stand and was on the prosecution team. You put those two together, and it was pretty devastating. Yeah. And as I think I told you, was waiting for this coming Monday morning. Okay, what's the defense going to come back with? And they obviously didn't come back with enough to sway the jury because the jury was in and out so quickly.
Do you think the comment from one of the defense attorneys I read on your website that it's not a crime for a business to fail, did that have any that hold any weight, that argument?
Well, it was a good point. There were other points they made, but I think the biggest thing that the defense did was basically Anthony Box, one of Josh's three attorneys, said, why are you going after Josh when you should be going after the Collins Asset Group? Those are the people that Ferrum Capital gave the money to, wow. And they defaulted. Well, the closing arguments Tuesday morning, Blackwell, the prosecutor, gets to come back and rebut. He does it, and then the three defense attorneys, he gets up and he goes, here's one problem. Collins Asset Group only had to do with Ferrum Capital. It had nothing to do with Ferrum 2 and 4. And I'm sitting there going, I've been waiting. I'm somebody ever going to mention that? Not that I'm an advocate. I'm just going, I know this.
What's Ferrum 2 and 4?
Ferrum had four different companies.
Okay.
Ferrum 2 was where they put money. Ferrum Capital was where they did the thing with Collins Asset Group to buy distressed debt. Ferrum 4 was European bonds. Nothing to do with the Collins Asset Group. And they showed in Ferrum 4 all the different bank accounts.
Interesting.
The money going into Ferrum 4 and going out for previous investors. So when Blackwell brought that up, it was like, I think they took away one of the biggest arguments that the defense had that, hey, this isn't Josh's fault. This is the Collins Asset Group.
What was the mood like when they read the verdict in the courtroom? Were people were shocked, surprised? Were there...
Very still.
Yeah.
I've been watching. Mike Cox's wife and daughters were there all week. I mean, not all week, the whole trial. And I saw them leaving the building a little bit after that, and they were surrounded by friends, and you could just tell they were devastated. They were distraught.
Were families of both there?
Josh said, he was asked, do you have family here? And he said, yes. It wasn't obvious to me. I've seen his wife, but it's been a long time ago. Yeah. It wasn't obvious to me she was there. Maybe she was. Maybe he had some other friends there or something. But people were really quiet. And they just sat there and they listened. And, it was.
So you mentioned earlier, or in the break, that for the entire trial, you didn't see armed guards until
armed U.S. Marshals.
Armed U.S. Marshals. So tell me that story.
So all of a sudden we're told verdict, and we scramble back in. And all of a sudden, as soon as I walk in, off to my right, the back row of the right side of the courtroom, there's armed U.S. Marshals.
They knew. Well, somebody knew.
Somebody knew.
Wow.
And I went, oh, my God.
What was the bigger surprise, the verdict or the fact that they left in handcuffs, went straight to jail until sentencing?
I think they were not handcuffed. I never saw them handcuffed in the courtroom.
Okay.
And I looked for that. I kind of stood up to see the angle. And, as soon as Judge Beery, Fred Beery said they are remanded, they were right up behind them and they took them right out.
Wow.
And maybe it was as far from where you and I are sitting to the door of your studio here, to where that door is. I never saw that they were handcuffed there, but then they were gone. And somebody asked me, do you know where they're taken? I really don't.
So that was my next question is where are they this morning? So the reason they didn't get a chance to bond out until the sentencing, which is scheduled for December, we were given the reason of flight risk is usually the thing, and they did cite that. Do you think they're a flight risk just being on the inside there?
I can't.
Not that it matters.
No, I can't answer that question. But the prosecutor's concern was they have means, and they're facing long prison sentences. Now, here's something I didn't have in a story, but Judge Beery, as he was discussing all of this with the attorneys who were pleading to not have them remanded, and this is leading up to him saying, no, I agree with the prosecutors, take them. He said, I once let somebody, either it was his case or another case he knew about, and he liked to tell stories. But he said there were a couple of guys who were left out, bonded, and they committed suicide. And they were kind of facing maybe a situation like this. And so he said, we're taking them.
Little tougher to do that in jail, I would think.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's a lot of moving parts. I want to ask you, maybe we do it after the break, but I want to ask you about one thing that struck me odd reading the coverage was we had Miss Wiley, thank you. She pled guilty and had a plea deal, correct?
Yeah.
All right. She admitted it, basically said she was a terrible person.
Yeah.
These guys didn't really admit anything. They just, kind of apologized for putting people through things. And if we don't get to your whole answer, we'll come back to it after the break. But my question is, do you find what can you read into as a journalist covering this stuff for decades that her sentencing, her guilty plea happened when? March. Her sentencing is 4 days after theirs.
At this point.
Is that odd to you?
No, it was always supposed to be after theirs.
Interesting.
Well, it was after their trial. Now it's after their. I mean, obviously the sense is that she helped give the feds information to prosecute Alan and
That's
Cox.
kind of what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Interesting. And that kind of sets the stage for them to be a little more lenient on the sentencing come December. It's fascinating stuff. We'll be back on the other side, more with Terry Greenberg, editor of LubbockLights.com after this.
Wake Up Call with Benji Snead continues on 92.3 The Hub, the voice for freedom.
Welcome back to the program. 8:36 a.m. You're listening to the Wake Up Call. It's 77 degrees outside right now. It's going to be 101, maybe 102 today, so the heat wave continues. Phone and text lines are open this morning. If you have a question for Lubbock Lights editor Terry Greenberg about the Ferrum Capital trial or anything regarding Lubbock Lights, we'll take them. Let's go to the phone lines. I understand we have somebody on. Good morning. You're on the Wake Up Call.
We lost them.
Lost them. Well,
I bet they'll call back, though.
Yeah.
We did have a text on the text line.
Let's hear it.
This is what this text says. They took $9 million for themselves. What happened to the other $50 million? This is what that text says.
Great question.
They don't know. The feds don't know what happened to that. Now, they made it very clear yesterday in their press conference in San Antonio, it's in our story, that they're going to do everything they can to get the money. But the expectation is these people who lost all of this money may get some back, but it's not going to be, it may be 10%, maybe a third or a half. But the expectation is they will never get all their money back. And where it went, like I said, if the feds don't know, I don't know.
Could it still be out there?
Could.
I mean, I guess theoretically anything could. We were talking before about the lady, Miss Willie, pled guilty. She's going to be sentenced 4 days after Mr. Allen and Mr. Cox in December. But you were saying you had the sense that maybe she cooperated to get guilty verdicts in this one?
You have to assume she did. But also, the other person who's going to be sentenced along with her is Paula Vasek. Paula Vasek was the woman who's a friend of Brooklyn's who basically laundered money for Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. Brooklyn got in trouble with the Texas State Securities Board, and she couldn't work with Ferrum. Mm-hmm. So this was this was pretty devastating evidence. Money was sent from Ferrum to a bank account she had for a bank, near the San Antonio area. Mm-hmm. And the bank president said, and it was supposed to be transferred to Brooklyn Chandler Willie, and she goes, hey, she's in trouble. We can't do this. So Brooklyn gets hold of Ferrum. Ferrum sets up a bank account in Lubbock, and the money goes into that bank account, and it goes to a company called Cold Moon Holdings, which Paula Vasek on the stand says it's a shell company. And the money went to Willie.
Interesting. One of your reports highlighted what I think was described as a secretly recorded conversation in which I guess we can call them victims now. One of the victims recorded this conversation between him and Allen.
Jay Adkins.
Retired
Lubbock dentist.
Okay. With Allen basically saying Jesus coming back to have to have any kind of problem, it would take Jesus coming back to have a problem with this investment. How significant was evidence like that in establishing the government's theory of intent?
It was just another log on the fire that they kept putting logs on the fire. But Jay Adkins, here's the sad thing. Jay Adkins has known the Allen family for years. Yeah. He worked with Josh's dad. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things the defense did a lot with the prosecution witnesses, well, didn't you read the contracts? Okay, how many of us read the fine print? Most of us don't, okay? I mean, I know I don't always read everything.
Still subject to it, though.
You're subject to it, and that was their point. Aren't you responsible for this? Mm-hmm. So Jay Adkins did read the fine print. He went down, he said, this seems more risky than Josh made it sound it was. So he went down and had a meeting with Josh, and he recorded it. And that's what came out.
So because he read the contract, that triggered him to record the conversation.
Right.
Okay. Interesting. So you're in the courtroom. What other things are going on that you just can't relay in a story, sitting there watching this unfold?
Mostly what I can, is stuff that happened that we could report on. I mean, it's open court. There wasn't a whole lot of drama. I mean, Mike Cox's support kind of had a few people there in the beginning, and then there were very few people on the defense side. Then they all showed up toward more the end. There were a lot of victims People who testified, some of them stayed. But Sherry Pullman, who is a San Antonio attorney representing people in the civil suits, was in and out, and she had some people there. But one of the things, just very quickly, one of the things the defense was wondering in Ferrum 4, European bonds, they were saying, well, why didn't the IRS and FBI trace the money to London? And they said, well, they didn't like the answer that the prosecution gave. And so during the defense closing arguments, Eddie Mendoza, one of Josh's attorneys, said, with the infinite resources of the federal government, why couldn't you do this? So that part of court is over that morning, Tuesday morning, and we've taken a break, and they've given it to the jury. And I'm watching a woman wrap up a bunch of stuff for the prosecution. They had these huge things they'd put up showing victims. And I said, hi, I'm Terry, and we introduced. I said, who are you? And she said, my name's Megan. I'm the infinite resource.
Yeah, I knew that was going somewhere.
But the other thing is Judge Beery is a fascinating guy. He's 79 years old, and you can't chew gum in his court.
Seriously?
No, I was told that by his deputy, who's very helpful. And when I called her originally to say, hey, we're coming down, what do we need to know? She goes, you can't chew gum. So in the middle of one of the first few days of the trial, Beery's up there. He's 79 years old. I mean, I kind of thought he looked like an Abe Lincoln hipster. But he all of a sudden he goes, I may be 79, but I have eagle eyes. No gum chewing. I looked around to see who it was.
Somebody sitting in the courtroom?
Somebody was chewing gum. Somebody, not somewhere back in the where the not the people involved in the case.
Right. So the feds have said that they intend to continue, and you said this earlier, pursuing recovery money for victims. What, from your perspective, what exactly should victims understand about the process and the prospects for recovering?
Well, we have a story that maybe just has been posted while we're sitting here, that James Clark. And James Clark did all the coverage of this, wrote all the stories up until the trial.
Right.
And he's got another one, basically, what's going to happen now with all the civil suits. And there is a September 3rd deadline if you want to be considered for part of the recovery.
Is there a realistic possibility they'll recover any portion of their losses? And give us a perspective and remind us how many total victims?
500.
Okay.
Or more than 500. I know that there's like $2 million that has been put in a fund. That's in this story that, like I said, it may already be up. I edited it at about 6 o'clock this morning. And there is money that's being set aside for victims, but and there may even be more than that, but this is not going to be a short process.
Right. So moving ahead, what happens next in this process? But they're going to stay in jail between now and sentencing in December. Yes,
as far as I know.
That's what I've read. So that's the case. Walk us through what happens in a court proceeding where they're going to be sentenced, and dare I ask you to make a prediction there?
Well, when he remanded them or had them taken into custody Tuesday, so the judge gets the verdict, and he went off and he was chatting for a while. Then he finally read the verdict, and they talked, and then they talked about the attorneys why they shouldn't be taken into custody. But in the middle or around all of that, he was very, very critical of them. And one of the things I think really upset the judge and the prosecutors was the use of faith to build trust.
Right.
And he started quoting scripture verses, and this was in our story, to Mike Cox. And he said, one about being merciful, and he goes, was it merciful to do this thing with the guy with the kidney? And he also said something about Brooklyn Chandler Willie showed remorse. I have not seen that same level of remorse from you two. That makes me think he's going to come down pretty heavy. He was not happy with them.
So you got a little insight based on his language there.
Yes. He seemed very ticked off with these two guys.
Interesting. We'll talk more about what happens next and see if are there any case studies out there that could give us some insight into how realistic a 70-year possibility of prison time compares to what reality might reveal. 8:46 a.m. More with Terry Greenberg with LubbockLights.com. After the break, stay with us. 92.3 The Hub.
Wake Up Call with Benji Snead continues on 92.3 The Hub, the voice for freedom.
Good morning. Welcome back to the program as we round out another edition of the Wake Up Call. 10 minutes till 9 a.m. Thanks for joining us this morning. It's been an insightful hour visiting with Lubbock Lights editor Terry Greenberg this morning, who was in San Antonio for the guilty verdicts in the Ferrum Capital trial that basically they got convicted on everything they were charged with, remanded into custody, no chance to bond out until their guilty plea in December. So before the break, you were Terry, you were talking about you guys are about to post a new story on that. Can you give us a preview?
Oh, it's a story about James and I were talking. So now that this has happened, kind of shift back to what we've mostly been reporting on, and that's the civil lawsuits.
Right.
All these many, many lawsuits from many people trying to reclaim some of their money. What's going on? And so he was talking to attorneys. It was kind of what are these attorneys who are representing the civil side of this? What's their reaction? Which was basically they were thrilled with the verdicts. And now what the hell does this mean? So
Interesting. Have you done any research about, I mean, this kind of thing, it's not the first type of trial situation we've seen where Ponzi scheme type stuff. Have you done any research about perhaps comparable cases where there was 70 years at stake and what someone actually ends up getting?
No, but so you figure Mike's in his 50s, maybe early 60s, maybe 50s.
Right.
I think Josh maybe 40s.
Yeah.
Well, do the math, 40 and 50 plus 70. I would think Judge Beery would give them a sentence that at the absolute least they might be in their 80s or 90s before they would be released. Unless of course, they get a pardon.
Yeah, interesting.
And pardons have become a much bigger deal. In more than seemingly, we've seen a whole lot more pardons lately than we used to.
Could the guilty verdicts lead to additional charges or investigations?
Well, I asked the feds yesterday, are there going to be more indictments? I mean, so this was weird. Connie Curry, Josh had two witnesses. Connie Curry, his mother-in-law, who worked at Ferrum, and their forensic accountant. Well, Connie gets up and they're swearing her in, and they start asking her, like, are you aware that this testimony could lead to you being indicted? And I think she at first thought, because are you going to tell the truth, the whole truth? The judge is swearing her in. And I think she meant they were asking about perjury. She goes, well, I always tell the truth. And I think they were having a hard time getting her to understand. I think she eventually did. So yesterday at this press conference, I said, are there further indictments? And it's no big surprise. The U.S. attorney said, we're not going to comment on things in an ongoing investigation.
Interesting.
So could she get indicted? Could other people get indicted? Are they going to go after the Collins Asset Group, which is pretty much defunct? Right. Are they going to go after other players? One of the things in James's story this morning is, are they going to go higher up the food chain from Ferrum and Collins? Did
the witness that worked for Ferrum have an attorney present?
No.
Interesting.
And they asked her, he said, do you have an attorney? She said no. And she was very defiant that they were on the up and up, and they were all shocked when Collins stopped payments. And she was, obviously she was her son-in-law's witness.
What do you do there, plead the fifth?
She could have, but she didn't. I kind of got the sense she was the witness who was going to say the things that Josh might have said if he didn't plead the fifth. Because Monday morning, no, I'm sorry, Friday morning when the prosecution rested, Friday morning before the prosecution rested, Josh and Mike were told, are you going to testify or not? And they both said not. So when the prosecution rested Friday morning before lunchtime, the judge says, okay, we're done for the day. We'll come back with a defense on Monday.
Yeah. Other than the possibility of perhaps other people being thrown in the mix criminally, as a journalist, what other unanswered questions about the Ferrum Capital case are you still trying to piece together?
No, you asked it. You guys asked it. Where's the money?
Right.
Is the money somewhere? And if so, how do people get it?
Right.
Are there going to be more charges? I mean, these are things we just discussed. Who else out there? And this is hard to get answers because a lot of people, who else out there was involved in this that we don't know about? Which is, I'm kind of answering the question, if we don't know about them, how can we do it? But, eventually sometimes people talk. Things happen, information comes. We'll be watching what the feds do and see, what they want to do.
How many victims in this 13-day trial that you were there for have you actually spoken to?
I don't know, half dozen, 10.
Is the overall sentiment the same in terms of justice being served?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so far.
So take Jay Atkins, the dentist who recorded Josh. He's known that family for a very long time. Worked with Josh's dad, who's a CPA who worked with him. I think the overall consensus is feel sorry for the families, but we're really happy this happened. We're really happy with the verdict because we were taken advantage of. I think one of the things, so in the press conference yesterday, the feds, they're going to say a lot of the boilerplate stuff and they're going to thank everybody. But one of the things, and I don't have his name right in front of me, but the guy, there was a U.S. attorney, IRS and FBI represented, along with the two attorneys, Blackwell and Samuel Shapiro. Those are the two who prosecuted the case. But the guy from the FBI, I think his name was Dornan, said, the victims shouldn't feel ashamed. So in talking to people, there were a few people said, can you keep my name out of the story? I said, sorry, it's open court. It's public record.
Right.
They feel ashamed, and it's almost like they're being re-victimized to have to tell the story because people are going to think I'm stupid or
embarrassed.
He made a point that don't ever feel you're at fault or you should have guilt. This is they're the ones who are guilty, not the victims.
Right. Interesting.
So
after following this case, from its early stages all the way through these convictions, what do you think is the biggest lesson for Lubbock investors and the broader community?
Well, the judge said this, and they said it yesterday at the press conference. If something sounds too good to be true, don't do it.
Right.
It's not the first time this has happened in Lubbock.
Yeah.
There's a list of people who've run afoul of the law and have cheated people.
Charles Perry, Senator Perry, was on the program yesterday. He said something very interesting, or made an observation from his perspective that he said something to the effect of this seems to be more prolific, this type of thing, in Lubbock than other places. Do you agree?
If it is true, and I have great respect for Charles, I've known him ever since he started running for office. This is a friendly place. And I think people want to trust people.
Wow.
Where maybe in some bigger cities, they'd be a little more hesitant. But Lubbock, I've heard this in the 20 years I've lived in Lubbock. Lubbock is all about the people. And if you trust in people.
There you go. Terry Greenberg.
Just be careful.
This morning with Lubbock Lights, talking about the Ferrum Capital trial, the latest guilty verdicts, now awaiting sentencing in December. Thanks for being here.
Happy to be here.
Hope you'll come back. Keep us updated. You're welcome to come on and tell us about any story you haven't published yet.
Yes, sir.
Any day of the week. That'll do it for us today on the program. We'll be back tomorrow. Elizabeth Geary, who is a part of the unique chamber event coming up, will be on the program tomorrow. So until then, I'm Benji Snead for Brennan Riker. 6 a.m. tomorrow. Join us.